Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sardinia. 2 months ago, we told you about the comeback of the year. And now the day has finally come. We bring back the KTM SMT. And you guys are amongst the very first people who get to ride the bike. But before you do just that, we want to tell you a little bit more about the KTM brand and how we want to stir up a segment of otherwise pretty generic products with the introduction of this exciting motorcycle. I know you're probably quite familiar with the Ready to Race brand, but can you believe we've been around for 70 years? Hell yeah, we have been making motorcycles since the early 1950s. And Ready to Race from the beginning, we started racing and winning championships pretty early on. But at KTM, we are not nostalgic. We don't like to look back. We always focus on the future, always progressing. So fast forward to 2023, we now stand at 333 World Championship titles. Ready to Race, our brand claim, is a statement that features proudly the DNA of every product we develop. And in racing, if you want to stay ahead of the competition, you have to take on new challenges. We thrive in competition, and what we do in racing, we also do for our brand. We adapt to the challenge, we strive for optimization until we dominate. One of my favorite statements that I read in one of your articles was KTM has officially confirmed that the much-loved and slightly bonkers SMT is making a return as the KTM 890 SMT. And that statement makes me very happy as part of the KTM marketing team, because it's really nice to know that the people out there know that we are the bold brand who produces these exciting motorcycles for hardcore people. And one of the most hardcore riders in our Orange family already got some mileage on the new KTM SMT. And we want to show you a little point of view video of his experience.
I'm Chris Fillmore, 3-time Pikes Peak International Hill Climb winner, and I'm over in Europe shaking down the brand new KTM SMT. The wait is well worth it.
Please welcome with me our true expert in supermoto and hill climb racing, legendary Pikes Peak record holder, Chris Fillmore. Hi, Chris.
Hey. Hey, everybody.
So good to have you here in Sardinia with us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I recognize a lot of faces, or I should say some faces, but probably most not everybody. So looking forward to the weekend and spending some time riding and hanging out with you guys.
You've set record at Pikes Peak on the KTM 1290 Super Duke R, 790 Duke and the KTM 450 SMR. Can you tell us a little bit about the unique challenges of hill climb racing?
Yeah, if you take Pikes Peak, for example, there's the challenges are kind of endless. So there's the challenge for the rider. So if you focus on what you have to learn for the course, how many corners, and then there's the bike and setting that up. So really when you look for a hill climb motorcycle, or speaking specifically for Pikes Peak, you need something that's quite diverse, something that can handle all types of conditions. The top of Pikes Peak is quite bumpy and the bottom is real smooth road racy, so you need a platform that's well-rounded, I should say.
So speaking about diversity, you've been on the KTM 890 SMT for the last couple of days now. How was it?
To sum it up, it's fun. Like, we've had a good time. It's a fun motorcycle to ride. You can ride it hard, you can kind of cruise. We've been sliding and popping wheelies, and everybody's just had a good experience on the motorcycle. So and that's been mine really as well.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
It should be. I hope everybody enjoys.
So you've seen it, you've tested it, now we should show them the bike.
Since it has touring in the name, we thought about showing you flowing coastal roads bathed in sunlight. But it's a KTM, and it also has Supermoto in its name, so we put it where it belongs. 890 SMT. Put an end to boring sports touring.
And here it is, the 2023 KTM 890 SMT. And to tell you everything about the bike, please welcome with me Head of Product Management Adrian Sinke and Head of KTM Global Marketing Rian Neveling.
Yeah, thanks Sandra. Yeah, as I said, super excited to have you guys over here. Chris, yeah, really good to have you here. I think to start off with, just a statement and a phrase that you will hear quite often. It's here on the screen, hell yeah. So I think let's give it a bit of a test. You've all been traveling quite far. Can I get a hell yeah? Okay, so I know there was another manufacturer doing a launch on the island as well. Again, this is KTM. Can we try that again? Can I get a hell yeah? Woo, there we go. All right. Thanks, guys. Yeah, it's all about having fun. Obviously, for you guys, testing the motorcycle is the priority, but we want to give you guys a good experience. So I think the guys did a really good job with the layout of the course that we've got for you. It's definitely technical, and it definitely shows the capabilities of the new KTM 890 SMT. So customers have very high expectations. They have high demands. They want a motorcycle that is good with commuting, gives good fuel consumption. You can use for the occasional touring trip, maybe alone or with your spouse. And then obviously they also expect something that can go up a mountain road pretty briskly. And with the KTM 890 SMT, we believe that it's the answer to everything. I know that's quite a bold statement. Again, proof of the pudding is in the eating. So we look forward to your feedback tomorrow after riding. So what I would like to do is, as I said, with our communication, official communication, the video that you just watched, it was very focused on hill climb racing. Yeah, a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde between myself and Adrian. Yeah, marketing, also product management. So, a bit of a clash sometimes. Marketing always says, go to the moon, let's do crazy things. And PM says, okay, guys, we need to slow it down a bit. But Adrian, the motorcycle is a very capable touring motorcycle.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's been a super cool project to do, and I'm very happy with the end result. And it's exactly that. It is exactly in the middle between a very radical supermoto bike and a great touring bike, and it does both actually really, really well.
Yeah. So I think that's the question. The name SMT, Supermoto Tourer. I would like to focus a little bit more on the supermoto side of things, at least for the beginning. And then, as I said, I want to take you on a bit of a journey, and I want to use the analogy of a hill climb race through this presentation. So from the beginning, your preparation, all the way to the finish line, and then beyond that as well. I know you've all been through many of these PowerPoints, and there's nothing worse than sitting here in an hour presentation, death by PowerPoint, clicking through. So we absolutely don't want to bore you, but we want to keep it fun for you guys. So Chris, first of all, 2019 Pikes Peak record holder on a KTM 450 SMR.
Correct.
2020 AMA Supermoto champion, AMA?
2020, yep, AMA Supermoto champion. All right, you're doing good.
Yeah,
Yep,
okay, yeah. Yeah, there's a couple more, but let's stop there.
Okay, Supermoto.
Obviously, your roots and your foundation was based off Supermoto racing.
Yeah, I got my start racing professionally Supermoto at 16, AMA Supermoto, with teammates of Jeremy McGrath and Jeff Ward and Doug Henry. So Supermoto is my core, my roots, for sure.
So tell us about a supermoto bike. How does it start off, and what is the progression to get to something that we see behind us?
I think most people probably know, but it starts with a motocross bike, a competition motocross bike. 17-inch wheels, or now 16 front, 16 and a half front, depending. Slick road race tires, a little bit adjustment on suspension, usually a slipper clutch, and yeah, that's kind of like the bare bones of what makes a supermoto bike.
But that's obviously for a single use case.
Racing.
Racing,
yeah, for sure.
Adrian, not really a racing bike, right? Could be.
Yeah, so what event are we going to create?
I don't know. We need
If
to
we
think something
create
up.
an event, we might have a racing bike.
No, so as Chris said, if you want to build a racing supermoto, you take a racing off-road bike. If you want to build a street-going
supermoto touring bike, you take one of the best adventure bikes, one of the best off-road adventure bikes on the market, an 890 Adventure, and this is then the basis for what is here, the 890 SMT. I've seen some people commenting social media, oh, it's just an Adventure with 17-inch wheels. I can tell you it's not, because we started off with an Adventure with 17-inch wheels, and that did not work. Yes, you can ride it, it's possible, and it gave us enough information to know that this is a really cool way forward, but we had to do a lot of work to actually come to this final product, the 890 SMT. A lot of work has gone in the suspension, the fuel tank obviously is different, and actually now that we're at it, I'll tell a little bit about the suspension. When you put a small wheel in an adventure bike, obviously the front is going to go down, so we had to make the fork longer. So this is a dedicated front fork for the SMT. Then, same as on our other street bikes, the offset on the fork is 0 millimeters, so the axle is directly in line with the front fork. There's much heavier springs in the front fork than are in the Adventure. We went from 6.5 Newton meters to 8. And on the rear is also a dedicated shock for this bike to balance out what we've done on the front. So then a lot of small changes had to be done, of course, to make sure that the brakes work with the 17-inch wheels, get all the offsets right, all the software is dedicated. So there's a whole lot of different parts to make it into the SMT that it is.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, and I think that was what some of the comments that we saw, is it just an 890 Adventure with 17-inch wheels? I mean, our story is kind of in that direction. As you said, you take a very capable off-road motorcycle and you adapt it for that purpose. But as I said, through this journey, we'll explain a couple of the features that have been updated. You touched on a majority of those now. As KTM, we always label our motorcycles, give them a bit of a nickname. So for the SMT, we've named it the Long Range Supermoto Weapon. So those two words are worlds apart. Long range going far distance and backing it in, those two don't really comply. But somehow it worked. Yeah, somehow it worked. Chris, your group yesterday, I think in the presentation we spoke about backing it in and sliding in. My suggestion was definitely to not do that. And you had quite some gnarly slides from your media, right?
I think it was the group in front of me, because somebody in front of me, every corner I came up to in the most random of corners, there was a black mark leading in, a black mark leading out. So yes, somebody in the group in front of me was
so not me, not you.
No, somewhere in between.
Okay.
I tried to mimic, so yeah, we'll see what it looks like tomorrow.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about, as I said, taking you guys on a journey, bit of an analogy. Let's start with hill climb racing. You spoke about Pikes Peak really quickly with Sandra. Let's just break down Pikes Peak. Altitude-wise, pretty gnarly, right?
Yeah, if you take Pikes Peak, it's a little over 12 miles from the start to the finish at the top. It's 14,000 foot elevation getting to the top.
So just hold on, 4,300 meters, if that makes any sense? Okay. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 156 corners. So again, kind of like the riding that you guys are going to experience tomorrow, it's always on the side. The mountain is, for us, is mostly broken down into 3 sections. You have the bottom, and it's basically the most fun, longest stretched out road race track. You get to the middle, and it's a bunch of switchbacks, like real tight. 4th gear down to 1st, back and forth. And then the top is more full on, fast, big sweeping corners, bumpy because it freezes and thaws, and not a lot of grip and extremely scary. That's kind of what Pikes Peak comes to, but you never know what conditions you're going to get there. It can be really cold, the sun can be out, it can be nice, snow can be melting, water running across in certain areas, or snow melt running across the course in certain areas. So yeah, you kind of have to be prepared for a little bit of anything that the mountain throws at you.
Yeah. And just quickly, I mean, as you said, 3 different distinctive records with 3 different motorcycles.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive. I mean, it would have been cool if the opportunity was there to actually give it a run on this one here. You think you would have done well with the SMT?
I think I would have given it a hell of a crack.
Yeah?
Yeah. I love racing motorcycles, and Pikes Peak for me was like such a unique opportunity to come together with a brand, and I was just lucky to be within the KTM family, and then for them to always be making the right motorcycle for the job, because it literally was. No matter what class I was in, lightweight, middleweight, or heavyweight, we were able to put together the right bike, or I should say the R&D team put together the right bike to get the job done.
Yeah. So let's just pause there for a second, because 3 distinctive models, 3 classes. We spoke before the presentation quite a lot, and I had many questions on Pikes Peak. And one of the questions was, is it very limited in what you're allowed to do? You said no. So what did you do to the motorcycles in general? I mean, you can go through each of them if you don't mind.
Yeah. Really, we'll start with the one that took the most modification. So when I did it in 2019, I did it on a 450 SXF, and I had to convert it into basically the bike that you see here, the SMR. We didn't have the SMR that model year, so we made one. So it was full suspension, wheels, tires, larger brakes, slipper clutch. I was lucky enough to get an engine from our factory engine department. That really was the most modified bike that I raced at Pikes Peak. Then if I back up to the first year, 1290 Super Duke, it was power parts, completely. Not many people believe me when I say that, but it really was. It was RWP, Pro Component suspension, power parts out of the catalog, and even really less for the 790 Duke because it was such a new model when we went and did the race run, and yeah.
And I really question that. I said, Chris, you guys have a fantastic race setup, race shop. You've got guys like Roger DaCosta, working on motorcycles, so you have all the knowledge in the world. And I know you've only really met these guys, and in the next 2 days, I'm pretty sure we'll become more acquainted with them and open up a little bit more. But be honest, why didn't you modify those motorcycles anymore?
Well, I'm a rider, and I had to be the mechanic as well. So I, did the bare minimum of what I thought was needed to get the job done.
Yeah. So I think
honestly,
that's good news for us, because this is pretty much a bike fitted with power parts. I'm not saying we can compare this motorcycle to any one of those, but the way I like to look at it is, obviously, Chris, the first record was on the KTM 1290 Super Duke R, and this really has the big bike characteristics of the 1290 Super Duke R. Second one is the KTM 790 Duke. This has the updated engine from its predecessor.
Correct, yeah. A little more torque.
Yeah.
And then a little bit more fun.
As you said, the 450, let's call it SMR. Yeah. It has the playful characteristics of that bike. So let's talk about preparing. So before you line up, I'm pretty sure you get nervous getting ready for a run like Pikes Peak, right?
Yeah, you get no sighting lap in Pikes Peak, so there's no opportunity to see the course. It's 1 day off. You show up at 8 a.m. and they say go, and you go to the top. Yeah. So it's one go, one try. Yeah,
so actually quite a similarity to what they will experience, because 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, you will not get a sighting lap and we will make our way to the top. So maybe not as fast, but...
No, we'll start slow and progress as needed, yeah.
Okay, so what I would like to do is just go through setup. What would you change or what would you adapt? One of the things that really stood out to me when talking to Chris was, and it was completely clear that he's, a very highly skilled rider. I mean, your records speak for themselves. But, every time I ask you something, you say, yeah, it's the feeling. It's the feeling. So you base really everything on feeling, right?
It's how you build confidence. Feel allows me to push. If I have good feedback from the motorcycle, the tires, the suspension, it allows me to go faster, feel more comfortable, not be so tense.
Yeah.
Anytime you're tense, that usually means the bike's not working or something else is off.
Yeah. Now, for mere mortals like us, we maybe don't have the feeling, so we need facts. I think that's important for marketing and for PM as well as for you, and we'll give you those facts all the way through. So I think one of the important things is, and you actually said it in the video that it goes live on the 9th of May, right. The features and benefits video that you shot, I think it's roughly a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
Pretty cold conditions. The team pushed you really hard.
Yeah, the video that you guys watched at the intro, we shot that like a month and a half ago, and it was cold, like colder than I wanted to ride. And it was, I think when we showed up, it was 0 at the top of the hill, and the high was 8 that day, and it was windy, crappy conditions, and the camera guys were pushing us to be more extreme, and to be honest, like I survived it, I got through it, and then the feeling was, okay, bad conditions, feeling was still good. The tires gave me good feedback. Overall, the experience was, the bike was quite versatile.
Yeah. So I refer to you as, I would say, an average size person. Myself and Adrian a little bit bigger. A couple of you also fairly tall. One of our R&D guys close to 2 meters. So having the bike set up, I think let's start with the handlebars, Adrian. Just give us a rundown of what the possibilities are.
Yeah, so similar to a lot of our other KTM models, also on the SMT, you can adjust the handlebars forward, backwards. They're currently in the middle position, but in total you have an adjustability of 30 millimeters, which is quite big for any motorcycle.
Yeah, so either, I mean, I've watched you ride quite a bit, and you have quite a unique style that you've got.
Hybrid.
Hybrid, yeah,
Hybrid,
okay,
yeah.
that's a good
I'm
one.
adaptable.
It's foot out, knee down, a combination of both, but you're really smooth. In our pre-shooting a couple of days ago, we had R&D test rider Hannes Meyer, who definitely does not ride as smoothly as you, and for him it's all about the show. And he was dragging peg and had the knee down.
His photos and videos will look better than mine then. Yeah.
But your leathers look cool.
Yeah, okay, win there. Gotta win somewhere.
But it's adaptable, it's for all riders. You can set up really how you want it. I think the next one is obviously setting up the suspension, because when you did the runs, you're quite a light guy. Did you change anything on the clickers?
I played with them. Yeah, I went a little, added a little bit more compression, a little bit more rebound, went back. The base settings are good. These guys also have a sport setting that works really good too. If you are really continuing to lap after lap or corner after corner for our experience shooting photos, you can dial it in, but the base settings are good. It gives you, it's compliant, yet still supportive when you are pushing or sliding or coming in a little bit hot.
Yeah. So as Adrian said, completely dedicated suspension for the KTM 890 SMT, 43 millimeter WP Apex front forks, open cartridge, compression one side rebound. Back.
On the rear, manual preload adjuster. So if you want to, for example, go traveling, it's quite easy to adjust the preload if you're riding with luggage or without. What I found really nice to see is that in the previous groups, there were really so many different opinions on how they would like the bike set up, and there was the camp of people who said, no, it's great as it is. It's very comfortable because the roads here are pretty bad sometimes, and then you come to some really fast sections, and then there were other riders who said, no, I will accept the compromise. I don't need this comfort, but I want to have the sporty suspension settings, and it's both possible. So
yeah. All the bikes are set up the same, and we suggest that you run it like that in the morning until you get to lunch. If you do say, hey, I'm a little bit heavier, carrying a little bit of extra load, and we can help you guys out, and then you can just test them back to back after lunch. I think that's a good one. Tires, obviously, as you said, 17-inch wheels, beautiful orange wheels, alloy wheels, good unsprung mass, flicking it from side to side.
Yeah.
I don't know how many S-bends there are on this course.
Uncountable.
Yeah. Quite a couple of them. Obviously, the other benefit of 17-inch wheels is super sticky rubber, and we've gone for the Michelin Power GP. Your first run that you did, let's actually talk about the shooting that you did a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
0 degrees. Pretty cold.
So you guys spend a lot of time on DOT tires, testing other motorcycles, but like my background was always racing. So slicks, tire warmers, perfect conditions, always optimal tire pressures, temperatures. So my honest feeling was that with DOT tires, which I have ridden but not that much of on public streets, they give you really good feedback. I've had a really good experience with what they have to offer so far.
Yeah. All right, so we've got the handlebars set up, the suspension prior to you running up the hill, maybe tire pressures, adapt them, know the equipment that you've got underneath you. Again, talking about feeling, quite a neutral setup on the SMT,
sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, which we figured out from like my riding style versus Hannes's. His is supermoto style, like slam the bike down, handlebar low. He sits up, squares up on his chest. I kind of take more of a road race approach, and so I try both, and you really can move around on the motorcycle, and I think that's kind of the key factor to having such a versatile bike that makes it fun, is you can ride it any way you want to ride it.
Yeah, and I think the benefit with sitting straight up is obviously good line of sight. You can see where you're going, opens up the chest, and obviously for those super sexy supermoto slides, you have quite a lot of control in the upright position versus a little bit more of a bent over approach.
It's an attack position for sure.
Yeah, so the bike that we've got here is dressed out quite extensively with KTM power parts. That's a power part seat. There's different heights available. It's a single piece seat. A lot of DNA filtered from the Supermoto bike that we see behind us into this bike. Good movement.
Yeah, great movement. I mean, you can really move around on a motorcycle, like I was saying. Like it's, you're not limited to one position like you are on a sport bike or some even naked bikes. Like you can really move around on it, whether you want to get back on it, sit back or forward, or hang off the side, or throw it to the side. Versatile.
Yeah, so 860 millimeters of seat height. Again, kind of catering for taller riders, shorter riders. We've had a variety of size riders. And for me, especially on the standard seat, being quite a tall rider, 186, I don't have too much of a knee angle. So, doing those long touring rides, I'll have good blood flow through my legs. One other thing that I really liked, and this is again just from connecting you to Supermoto, back in 2020, I noticed you had a bump on the rear of your seat. What's the purpose of that?
It's just to kind of keep you in the optimal position. It also, when you're accelerating hard or coming out of a corner, it doesn't allow you to slide back, so you don't have to use so much endurance to hang on. And on the production bike, on the production seat, I should say, same experience.
Yeah, it also helped for the wheelies, right?
Yeah, it keeps your butt in the pocket for the wheelies for sure.
All right, our setup is done. Let's roll up to the start line. You nervous for Pikes Peak, rolling up to the start?
Yeah, you get no warm up. Just green light go.
Yeah.
So naturally, for sure.
How important is the start of a hill climb race?
It's a time trial, so it's not quite as important as lining up on a grid with 40 people, but at the same time, every second counts. So you want to make sure that you have the right feeling, clutch is working right, and get going as quick as possible.
Yeah. So just jumping back, engine-wise, you raced a couple of Super Hooligan races as well.
Yep.
790 Duke, you've had good success with starts with it.
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Obviously, this is the updated engine, and it has been for quite a while. Quite a lot has been done to the engine from back in 2018, if I'm not mistaken. Just talk us through the development of the engine.
Yeah, so the 790 engine was developed for the 790 Duke, launched in 2018. Since then, we updated it in the Duke, the 890 Duke R, and now again also in the Adventures. The engine in the SMT is based on the Adventure one. The big difference between the Duke and the Adventure engines is the timing of the valve train. The reason we put this engine in the SMT is because it is much torqueier than the Duke. There is generally more torque available, but most importantly, it's available earlier in the power band. And this helps you to, this is a street bike, so you're gonna notice it tomorrow. It always has enough torque to pull you out of the corners. And it's also a great engine for touring. So I think this is the best mix of both worlds.
Yeah, if you guys want, we can share a graph with you. I think just to compare the KTM 890 Duke engine, which is a 115 horsepower engine, and in the SMT we've got 105 horsepower. But interesting, the SMT torque and power is it's better all the way through until 7,500 RPM.
Yeah, about 7,500. That's until there. This engine always has more power and more torque.
Yeah. Cool. So engine-wise, we're good. We've got, as we said, 105 horsepower, 100 newtons meters of torque. So we're pretty good. The package underneath us is going to missile us up this hill climb as quickly as possible. But you need to actually pull away. Clutch, feeling-wise, do you use the clutch much?
I don't use the clutch too much. I mean, to take off, obviously for the start, you need it. Traditionally, a lot of the KTM's motorcycles, or when I grew up racing them, we used a hydraulic clutch, and this is cable actuated. And for me, it's I can't even really say I noticed the difference. They work good.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that obviously the difference between hydraulic and cable, with the cable clutch, it can get hot and stretch. Did you experience any of that?
I didn't. No. I mean, when I do the start, I don't touch it. We have electronics now, auto up and down, and auto blip, and so there was no need for it.
Okay, so good feeling. Obviously, quite a good connection between your fingers and what's happening in the clutch as you release and you get off the start.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think there might be an opportunity for you guys to practice a start or two tomorrow. So really just to take what we're saying here and put it into practice. So All right, so getting a good start is important. Obviously, as you said, momentum is always key. So assuming we got a perfect jump off the line, there are a couple of features on the SMT that will also help you get that drive forward and maintain that momentum. Motorcycle traction control, or MTC as we call it. You always run it on?
I don't always run it on, but when we do the pre-shooting and when I'm new to a track or don't know what the conditions are going to be, I use it as a safety net. I don't mind starting with it on and allowing the electronics to do the job that they were designed to do, because they work good.
Yeah, I noticed in the video that the clip that Sandra played, you had it on 6.
It was cold.
It was cold.
Yeah,
okay.
it was cold.
Okay. Adrian, so a bit of an update on the MTC. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, on the SMT you can get the track mode. In the track mode you have 9 settings of traction control, which are available directly while riding, so you can always adapt if you want to play around a bit. You can have less traction control, you can dial it up if the conditions get worse. But one big change that we introduced with the Adventures this year, and it's also on the SMT, is that you can dial it all the way down to 0. There's 2 very simple reasons for it. In the past you had to go into the menu to switch traction control off. Now you can do it in the main screen by just holding the button pressed down for 4 seconds and traction control is off. The second reason is, it was always a bit of a question, what is more traction control, what is less? Now 0 is off. I mean, this everyone understands. So if you go 0, there's no traction control, and 1, 2, 3, up to 9 is ever increasing traction control.
Yeah. So you mentioned the different riding modes. Obviously we have rain, and 9 is equivalent to the rain mode in terms of roughly. We have rain mode, we have street, and we have sport. Optional is the track mode. And as we said, there's quite a lot of things that come with that, MSR, the slip adjustment. Chris, just to come back to you, you can also dial in your throttle input. Which mode do you prefer?
Yeah, we have sport, street, and rain.
Yep. Don't say rain.
I think we're safe.
Okay.
I kind of like the street mode the most. I mean, it depends on what we're doing. If we're shooting photos and trying to be aggressive and get out of corner wheelie shots, I'll go to sport mode, so it has a little bit more hit. But street, to me, on most of our products, just gives me the ability to kind of slower, faster, calms things down. I can hit my lines a little bit better. That first touch of throttle is just a little bit softer, so I just find myself carrying more momentum.
Yeah, cool. Next one on the line is quick shifter, because obviously you roll off the start, you get a good jump, you need to start thinking about shifting up. When you race, let's say for example the RC8, how did you set the shift times on the quick shifter?
Yeah, for superbike racing, it's always high RPM, really short kill times, because of the high RPM.
Yeah.
Most shifts are happening there.
Okay. Adrian, that won't really work on something like an SMT, would it?
Yeah, so this is the big difference between the quick shifter as you may be used to it on a race bike. Race bikes you always shift at a relatively fixed RPM. Of course, on a street bike you shift from 1500 all the way up to the red line. So the quick shifter has to work all the time. There's a sensor that not only detects when you want to shift, but it also has a sensor that detects when the gear is in. So the moment, if you're at lower RPM, it takes a bit longer to shift. If you're super high RPM, it's much shorter, and it automatically adapts to the shift time.
Yeah, cool. So I mean, it makes a cool sound as well. I think that's the other benefit. Nice little pop.
Yeah, a little pop. Yeah, for sure.
All right, so good start using the traction control, actually driving forward. I would like to assume that our first corner is a gnarly hairpin, because there's nothing nicer than a bike backing it in absolutely sideways on the stopper, foot peg or foot dragging on the ground. So there's a couple of things that you need to do to get this motorcycle to actually pitch in, like this picture here demonstrates. Can you talk us through the process of getting a bike to slide?
Rush the corner, grab a couple downshifts, counter steer, little rear brake, and yeah, you're following me backing it into the corner.
Okay, so it sounds quite simple. You've mentioned a couple of times you do it by feeling, so to talk about it is kind of difficult. I'm going to slow it down.
He's asked me this before, so I've tried to think about it a little bit. But the reality is, you just kind of rush the corner, grab a couple downshifts. I let the slipper clutch. You know, sometimes before there were slipper clutches, you really had to modulate the clutch, get the rear wheel and the engine working together. But now the slipper clutches work really good. So.
Do you still feather it?
I don't. No.
So
I mean, maybe depending on what the corner is and if I'm coming in too hot or you know, I'm a little bit too high in the RPM, yeah, I might grab it, but in general, no.
Okay, so let's talk through the process, because he really just, you do this and this and this, and I know you guys are taking notes. How do I do this tomorrow?
Yeah, you're going to be graded on it as well.
so full on the stopper, you know, you head barreling down to this corner. The first thing you want to do is chop the throttle, I guess, right?
Yep, chop throttle and downshift almost at the same time.
Yeah, load the front with brakes, is that?
Yeah.
He's jumping the gun again. He's okay. So
it happens naturally. Yeah. I don't have this written down.
Chopping the throttle, shifting the weight forward. You need to start thinking about braking. One interesting thing, and this question came up after the journalists riding the bike from the previous groups, you need to brake. So we have 320mm brakes on the front. We have these 4-piston radially mounted calipers. They are the same fitted that we have fitted on the Adventure range, right?
Yeah, and the brake pads are the ones from the Adventure R.
Yeah.
So they're the slightly more aggressive pads, and they are really, really, really powerful.
Yeah. I think that was one of the questions. The guy said, I don't think they're the same. They don't feel the same. Of course, 17-inch wheel, super sticky tire, consistent grip, bigger contact patch. They do feel drastically different. And I think that's the thing with this motorcycle is, yes, we've changed quite a lot of things, but the package works really well together. All right, so coming back, adding brakes. Now we need to gear down. You said you don't really use the slipper clutch, hand just on the bar.
Yeah, hand on the bar.
Yeah, gearing down, we have quick shifter plus as well, so auto blips, it sounds pretty cool. The thing's now pitching sideways. How do you control the slide?
Kind of start it with the rear brake, just feather it a bit, but then it's really, it's the counter steering that starts to get it to kind of just step a little bit sideways. And then from there, it's your entry speed, your closing speed. Yeah. How aggressive do you want to slide? Do you want it just to be smooth, more of a setup for the corner? Or do you want to take a photo like that?
I want that. I can't do it though.
You're going to show these guys how to do it tomorrow, right? Yeah, you're leading.
Yeah. So on the back, a 260mm brake disc with a floating caliper. And for me, what was interesting, as we said, there's, I don't know how many corners there are, and you're on the front brakes, on the rear brakes. The bikes are set up standard, and what I mean by that is there's no weird brake fluid that we've put in, and we had, well, at least from my side, no brake fade at all. So yeah, give it a test tomorrow. Stay on the black stuff, but yeah, definitely give it a try. Try that slipper clutch out, try shifting that weight, and yeah, hopefully the film crew gets a good shot of you and we can stick it in your magazine. All right, so you've backed it in, looking sexy as hell. We need to get this bike to settle. In our conversation prior to this launch, you spoke about different motorcycles that you've ridden. One of them was actually a prototype Moto3 bike.
Yeah.
What was that like to ride?
It's actually Jack Miller's Moto3 bike. Really cool media opportunity. I don't know if anybody in the room also got to partake in it, but yeah, at Valencia on a Moto3 bike. It was an unbelievable experience, but at the same time, you know, Moto3 bikes, they're so stiff that you can't feel if you're on the limit or far from it. And I was far from it based on the lap time, but felt like I was on it. So yeah, not a lot of feeling.
Yeah. So allowing a bike to settle is obviously key, because if this thing is still flapping around, you can't do anything. You don't really want to brake more, you don't really want to lean it over, definitely don't want to touch the gas. The frame is quite a crucial part, and this is, for me, was really interesting. Adrian, the frame, just talk us through from 890 Adventure. Obviously on an adventure bike it needs to be able to do a lot more than, for example, this, but it seems to work.
It works really well. The frame is the same frame as on the 890 Adventure. Obviously made for riding off-road, absorbing big bumps, some crazy riders maybe taking massive jumps on it, and it has to cope with it. So it's a strong frame, but it also has a little bit of flex built into it for comfort. Yeah.
So obviously it's quite a difficult thing to tell, but you know, letting it settle, you have this latitudinal flex in the frame, just absorbing some of that, let's say, momentum. Something that you really liked is the suspension, the 180mm of front fork travel. How does that work for you? How did you feel?
So my initial feelings of riding the motorcycle is with the extra travel, you get a little bit more comfort, plushness. But the way that the bike is also set up is that the valving is supportive if you are hard braking. So it's kind of surprising, I would say, is the first thing. Like, I was actually surprised because you have quite a bit of comfort on the rough roads, but then when you do grab a handful, it's quite progressive in a supportive way to allow you to push. So it's really a bit of a shapeshifter. Like, you can kind of do a lot with the motorcycle, and yeah, we keep on saying this, but it is a bike that can deliver what you're looking for, whether you're touring or riding it hard.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, the bike's settling now. Obviously, as you said, you know, with these type of corners, you normally carry quite a lot of entry speed. If you don't trust the tires underneath you, you're not going to crack it over.
Yeah.
Tires are good. I mean, obviously the road surface here. Who's ridden in Sardinia before? I think that's a good start. Okay, yeah, quite a lot of you guys. I mean, the roads are amazing, as you know. They're super good. I think any tire will perform well here. We had some guys here in January and they rode in rain and snow, and it also worked. So I think overall, good tire, good for touring. You have the trust in the tire just to crank it over if you need be. I put in body position again because it's just related to feeling, and I think this picture here really sums it up nicely. Supermoto styles changed quite a bit. They don't really do that anymore.
No, it's a little bit more feet on the pegs, a little bit more GP style, wheels in line, yeah.
But obviously having that upright body position, you know, if you want to do the knee down like Chris, myself, sometimes I like to put the knee through the handlebar. It's got good range of motion, it's quite easy, there's nothing really getting in your way. And obviously, again, coming back to the touring side of things, that upright body position is also quite relaxed, right?
No, I mean, I think it's, I was thinking about when I was riding the bike earlier this week, if you want to change the handlebar already, and I haven't heard anyone who wanted to change this, so that's actually quite good.
Yeah. All right, so we've turned the corner, the bike's settled, we're pointing in the direction we want to go. We need to get on the gas, slingshot out the corner, get that drive up the hill. Some features that will help you get there, just really briefly, and this is really comparing to the bike that Chris raced at Pikes Peak, so the 790 Duke. Why did we add from 790 Duke to the 890 platform that 20% more rotating mass?
Yeah, so this was added when we built the first 890 engine already. So the crankshaft is a little bit heavier, it's got a bit more inertial mass, and this is because otherwise the bike would be so torquey that it would get very nervous, would start spinning tires very quickly. And this added inertia just makes it much easier to ride. It's just nice at very low speeds through hairpins in the city. Yeah, just an easier bike to ride.
Yeah, and I think with tight corners, when you start getting on the gas, that pickup is quite smooth as well. And as you said, in the city, it kind of just chugs along. You don't have to pull in the clutch and keep the idling up. Yeah, so getting out the corner means you need to shift weight. We spoke about the tire, so you need to load the rear of the tire, but also the shock. You currently preload running, you've dialed it up a bit?
I've played with it a little bit, yeah,
okay.
Just depending on what you want. So it's surprising, I think you guys will see, I recommend trying it. Every lap of the preload adjuster is 1 millimeter preload onto the shock spring. And for me, 1 is enough. I tried 2, it was a little bit too much for regular street riding, so I backed it out 1. Yeah, just a little bit too supportive for my weight.
Maybe for me it would be okay.
You could probably do 3.
Thanks, I think after this media launch I need about 4. Just coming back to the slip adjustment, Adrian, as you said, on the fly you can adjust it. Relating back to Pikes Peak, you're starting at the bottom, nice and warm, all's good, and at the top it gets pretty chilly, I guess.
Yeah, chilly, rough, slick,
tire
unpredictable, windy, yeah, everything.
Yeah. So guys, give it a go. If you feel the tire, you know, when they get warm, I mean, it is a road going tire if it gets warm, because we will be running at, let's say, quite a brisk pace if you wish to. Obviously, if you don't, then we'll dial it down. But if you start feeling a bit of movement, play around with that slip adjustment, and then just really feel what it feels like, because it gives you really good feedback and it allows you to really focus on the task at hand, where you want to go, and let the electronics just do their thing.
Yeah, it puts the control in your hands. So you don't have to stick to one position. You can try them and figure out what you like.
Yeah. So we're starting you guys off on street mode. If you want to jump into track mode, so all the bikes are fitted with power pods as well as with the electronic software, so TrackPack. So I would say start on street and then work your way up, play around, and really get a good feeling of how these systems help you out. Chris, S-bends, they're quite tricky. You said Pikes Peak, roughly how many do you have in the middle section of the run?
So switchbacks, there's like, close to, I would say 15 at least. I can't remember, at one point in time I had them all memorized based on how many gears you have to go down or up, or if it tightens on the exit and there's a runoff, or there's not.
Yeah. So not too many S-bends on Pikes Peak. And here, do we have?
An uncountable amount of S-bends. You'll be a pro by the end of it.
Yeah. So taking an S-bend, obviously it is quite a large motorcycle. As we said, the pace will be, I think you'll enjoy it. But changing direction is obviously super important. Again, relating back to that Moto3 bike, if you change direction too abruptly, what would happen to you?
Well, the Moto3 bike would be like the worst street bike ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would snap. It would give you a little warning, and it would be an abrupt snap. Where
and snap means off the mountain, I guess, right?
Let's hope not, but there's potential for it, obviously. Okay. Yeah.
So this is definitely not that. Again, the frame, as Adrian said, it has to do for the off-road part of things. It needs to be able to do a lot. You watch Chris Birch doing crazy jumps, and I think changing direction. It's important, maybe you make a small mistake, maybe a little bit more abrupt, and that flex in the frame, it's super forgiving. And I think that's what I'm getting to here. The bike really allows you to shift around, and if you do make a slight mistake, it's not going to flick you off the side of the mountain.
The flick, like the bike is flickable from side to side. It moves unbelievably well.
Yeah.
Just the seating position in general. And then I think maybe the center of gravity being shifted a little bit higher with the way that the suspension and the overall setup is. Yeah. Back and forth, side to side, and you're going to have the ability to test it out. But to me, that's where it shines. That's where it's fun. It feels light. It feels nimble. That's where the bike comes alive.
Again, upright position, allowing you to move from side to side. The ergo triangle, if the foot pegs, were 5 millimeters too far to the front or too far at the back, your strength would not be, let's say, at the optimum placement for you to move it from side to side. So good package. You will definitely be able to test it out on the riding day. A lot of S-bends and on the side of the tire the whole way around. Altitude gain, obviously you're going uphill, so you're gaining quite a bit of altitude. When you're running up Pikes Peak, can you feel the difference in the bike?
A little bit. It's kind of linear. You start, I'll say the bottom, but it's not actually the bottom. You're starting actually somewhere, I think around 7,000 or 8,000 foot elevation and going to 14, so doubling that or close to it. But yeah, you get to the top section and she gets a little bit anemic, for sure. It's looking for oxygen, and you can tell. You hold the gear a little bit longer than you would at the bottom.
And talking about the top section of Pikes Peak, you said it's pretty fast. The bike needs to be stable. Sure. Swing arm on the 890 SMTs carry over from the Adventure, so it's the same swing arm. But I would say the benefit is off the top of the hill, you're going fast. Straight line stability, which is important, and obviously good grip, plants good grip on the rear tire. And then again, stability for those long touring rides. If you do barrel down the Autobahn, you know that the thing's planted and you're going straight. Adrian, just to touch on the altitude topic, again let's just refer from 790 Duke, there's been a couple of modifications to the 890 platform.
Yeah, obviously when you're going in the mountains, the fuel injection has to adapt. We can't help if there's less oxygen in the air because it's just not available. But what we have done on the 890s is that we measure the performance of each individual cylinder separate. So we're always ensuring that each cylinder is getting the injection that it needs to be at the optimum performance.
Okay, so getting you up the hill, making sure you get that good lap time.
Yeah.
All right, hairpin, there's always hairpins. As you said, there's quite a lot of Pikes Peak. At an event like Pikes Peak, I know you're quite an athletic guy and you don't really get tired, but for mere mortals like us, especially on this 200-kilometer run, I was red in the face and I had some sweat dripping off my eyebrow. Pikes Peak, you don't want to make a mistake, right?
No, it's high consequences if you do. For sure. You limit those.
Yeah, so I guess in a situation like a hairpin, I definitely had myself a couple of times going one gear down too many. We have a feature for that, Adrian. How does it work?
Yeah, so earlier we touched on the slipper clutch, which obviously catches a lot of this kind of mistakes. If you shift down very heavily, the slipper clutches are impressive. I didn't actually think about it until we were riding here, that when you ride old motorcycles, like they were just sliding all over the place, and this one is just, the slipper clutch catches a lot of it. But there will be a moment when, if you don't have enough grip, obviously the tire cannot push the slipper clutch open. And this is when, as Chris said before, this is when the racer opens the throttle manually. We have MSR on these bikes, which allows the computer to take over at the moment that the tire starts to lose grip on the rear. It opens the throttle just a little bit to keep the traction.
Yeah, so it helps us out. So if you do make a mistake tomorrow, you'll be in safe hands. The tank, you said it's a dedicated tank. Can you tell us about the tank?
Yeah, so we reduced the fuel capacity because on our adventure bikes, they're aimed at traveling in remote places, off-road, where the chances are that you might not find a fuel station. Obviously, this is a bike for street touring, so there will be much more opportunity to get fuel. So we wanted to reduce the profile of the bike a little bit, get the weight a little bit higher up, and this is why we removed big parts of the lower part of the tank, but moved some of it to the top. It sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but you have to imagine that if you have like one of those child's toys, you know, that are heavy at the bottom, and you pull them over and they come back up straight. This is the opposite. If you put a little bit of weight on the top, it actually helps you to move it into the corners.
Yeah, so for a hairpin, that's ideal.
Yep.
You don't need too much force to get it to turn in. And it's quite interesting, it doesn't fall over or tip
No,
in.
it's super neutral.
Super smooth. All right, I think we've done it. We've made it up this hill climb. We've crossed the finish line, all good. As we said, and now the touring starts. So this is the touring part of it. But again, I sneaked in and onto the next one, onto the next hill climb, because there's quite a few here. So we will give you guys, the road conditions vary, guys. So we have from very open, fast flowing sections to quite super tight sections, broken up tar. We have a section of freeway for you, so really to put the bike to its through its paces. Adrian, let's talk about the touring part of the bike and just recap on what is available with the bike, because for our shootings, we KTM, we take off most of the bits that we don't need. Just talk us through how the bike comes standard.
Yeah, so we talked about before the rider position on the bike. It's a very comfortable bike to ride. What we really enjoyed, and I was following one of the riders in the previous group, and he wanted to do some voiceover. So he said, "I'm going to go very slow." I'm like, "Oh God." And I was riding the bike slow, and I thought it actually is a really nice bike. Some of our motorcycles are so aggressive that you don't enjoy riding them slow, and this one's actually nice. It's a nice, pleasant bike to ride a little bit at a lower pace.
Yeah.
And then the microphone went off, and I had to try and catch up. So that was then the next thing. Wind protection. We tried to make the bike look and feel as sporty as possible. So we put a small screen on the SMT as standard, but we have 3 different screens available if you want to have much more wind protection. Something that we also noticed in the comments, of course, in all the pictures, we took away the grips and the luggage rack. So there were some questions online if they are available. The bike will be delivered with these grips and this luggage rack. Also, you can fit all our luggage that is available for the adventures. So you can really kit the bike out to be a full-on touring bike, or as the one we have here, much more like a supermoto bike. The LED lights. We always like to say that behind the factory in Mattighoven is one of the darkest roads in Europe. This is where we do our headlight testing. So it's a carryover from an adventure bike, and they are very bright, and it's just nice. I don't think any of us really enjoy riding in the dark, but traveling, there will be a moment when you have to. Cruise control is another cool feature. You know, as much as we wish we would all be living in hill climb land, unfortunately that's not the reality, and sometimes we just have to sit the whole day on the highway, and cruise control will take it over for you.
All good. So guys, just to recap, as we said, quite a bold statement. It's the answer to everything. Marketing guys always have bold statements. And as we said, we've covered both here. It's the long-range supermoto weapon. So if you want to go long distances with the pannier boxes on the back, it's a good bike. It gives good fuel consumption, fairly comfortable. And then if you get to a cool mountain road, maybe you stay over at the hotel, you take the boxes off, turn up the preload, turn the clickers, and send it up the hill. So we hope you guys are gonna enjoy the bike. Just a real quick recap of the different features of the bike. One that we didn't really touch on, but super cool, demo mode. Can you tell us about it, Adrian?
Yeah, we've been selling optional software on KTM since we had the 690 Duke. So that's been 7 years now. It's a great way for people to configure their own bike, because you can choose to have either nothing on it, just take the quick shifter. If you're a more radical rider, you can buy the track pack, get the track modes. I know a lot of people that don't need those, but it makes it very easy to choose what you want. What we did find is that people didn't know if they needed the functionality, and they had to make the decision at the beginning. So we've decided to put all the modes on all the bikes for the first 1,500 kilometers, so everyone can try them out. If you want to buy them, you can buy them. If you do not, they will deactivate after that.
Yeah. So coming from a sales background, for me that was super cool. I said customers can make an informed buying decision on what they want or what they need, and that way they don't get a function that they don't really need. So just to recap, on the rear shock, 180 millimeters of travel, ground clearance, very important, especially for roads like this, 227 millimeters of ground clearance. Yeah, tires we spoke about, the Michelin tires are amazing. Really quick warm-up phase, super grippy on the edge grip, and yeah, pretty good for touring as well. We spoke about the engine. You know, it's such a solid foundation that we've got, and it's something that we keep developing and improving. I mentioned the horsepower, but you're more of a torque guy. It depends on riding style and also what you want to do. But really, any gear you can just roll on the gas with 100 Newton meters of torque. She'll get you there fairly quickly. We said super sexy wheels, orange wheels, nice unsprung mass, allows you to put nice sticky tires on. You like the 180 millimeters of travel on the front fork, you can really load it, it's progressive, the springs are quite stiff. Adrian, you spoke about the tank, a little bit high center of gravity, 15.8 liters of fuel consumption, really easy to flip from side to side. Last but not least, we didn't really touch on the dash, which is a carryover from the 890 Adventure platform, which we launched at the end of last year. Maybe just talk us through the dash real quick.
Maybe one small point, you just mentioned progressive. The springs are linear. It's the damping that makes them feel progressive. Yeah, so the dashboard, you probably have ridden some of our other models. The last few years we've been really moving in a much more graphic direction. So we found out that it's difficult sometimes to completely understand what a certain function on the bike is, and I know because I sometimes have to come up with the names for them, and it's not easy. So what we do now is we try to have icons and images for all the functionality. So when you're riding and you look down on the screen, it's very easy to see what you're shifting and how you're shifting. Yeah, then of course, as I mentioned before, the logic in the track modes, and there's a lot of development going on in these things. The dashboard is dedicated for the SMT. We have Supermoto ABS, not off-road ABS. Also the ABS settings, of course, are specific for this motorcycle. The traction control settings are specific for this bike. So yeah, there's a lot going on. Yeah.
As I said, all these bikes are fitted with power parts. I just picked a few of them that really stood out to me. I think the first one, the factory triple clamp, it looks really good in the orange, but it also has a function, right, Chris?
Yeah, for triple clamps, always if you're, say, going to the track or just riding hard, it gives it a little bit of more support to the front end. A little, maybe less flex, more rigidity, which just allows you to push usually a little bit harder.
Yeah. And I think my favorite one was the engine protection. Yeah, I didn't have such a successful racing career because I was on the ground more than what I was on the bike. And yeah, we always say, you know, two types of riders, the ones that have crashed and the ones that will crash. So yeah, my dad was always happy to stick these on the bike. They look cool, but they also actually have a function. So
good investment.
Good investment, yeah. For sure. Yeah.
And one thing that I cannot wait to try out is this seat.
Yeah.
We unfortunately didn't have the parts here, but this would really change the bike again.
Yeah, a little bit higher, a little bit stiffer,
yeah.
A little bit more aggressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, we have a full range of KTM powerwear. Just going to pick out two here. So first of all, the Racer R Pro helmet in collaboration with one of our partners, Shark. Super cool helmet. Has the ear pockets for communication system, so really cool. For our tour guides, we can communicate with each other. Helmet's really comfortable. And then probably my favorite one for this event, you know, it's a two-piece leather suit. Chris looks really good, you know, super flashy, but at lunchtime his leathers are always just hanging on his ass. So I could just get off my jacket.
Yeah, looking good, but a little bit less comfortable through the day.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Guys, that kind of wraps it up from our side. As we said, tomorrow we'll discuss a lot more, but for us, it's really about you riding this product and experiencing it. Thanks, guys.